Thank you very much, and I want to thank the Fargo Chamber, Senator Hoeven, and certainly Scott Hennon for allowing us to put this panel together today and for putting this event on. The Bakken attracts a lot of interest, not just in North Dakota, but across the nation and across the world. And we have seen that certainly rise over the past 5 or 6 years, and it continues today. We have held about 28 town hall meetings across western North Dakota. My team of Lynn and Kathy here and I have found it amazing. Everywhere we go, people want to understand the Bakken. They want to understand the opportunities. They want to understand the technology, and also want to talk about the challenges and the impacts and all of the things that come along with it. But we've started what we call our Bakken Rocks Cook Fest. This is our 3rd year of doing it. 2 weeks ago, we were in Crosby, North Dakota. We had 1,000 people attend our big community barbecue and education session in Crosby. And let me tell you, if you get 1,000 people to Crosby, North Dakota, they want to come. Because if you get to Bowbills, you're not to Crosby. And if you get to Williston, you've got a long ways to go to Crosby. But 2 nights later, we had it in Watford City. We had 3,000 people attend our event in Watford City, North Dakota. So that was really, we were just absolutely amazed at the crowds that we have at these events. And we're glad to be here in Fargo. We have assembled what I think is the best of the best panel today. And I'm going to turn it over to them and let them simply provide you the facts on what's going on with the Bakken and how it works. There are too many issues to discuss in an hour. We're going to focus today on really the basics of the Bakken, the opportunities that are presented by the Bakken, and why this resource is attracting the amount of capital and creating the opportunities and the jobs and the wealth and the great budget surpluses for the state of North Dakota. We could be here and we could talk about the challenges and the impacts and all of those things for another day in and of itself. Those things are all real. We're engaged in them every day, and it's certainly prosperity doesn't come without change, and change doesn't come with economic development all tightly bundled and everything be perfect at it. We can't tell who we want in at the border and who we don't want into the state, but those things all come, and those are challenges that we're all going to address. But I'd like to introduce Kathy Neset. Kathy is certainly the best geologist in the Bakken. She's potentially the best geologist in America, and I think today she's the best geologist in the world. She went from a one-person business in 2000. Today she's got 175 employees in Tioga, North Dakota. That's not untypical. Please welcome Kathy.
Well, thank you very much, Ron, and wow, I certainly hope I can live up to that introduction. Well, let me get started here. I have a couple props I want to use along here. Like Ron said, I'm located in Tioga, North Dakota. I consider myself one of the luckiest people in the world. I came from New Jersey, and I was talking with my table in the back of the room, the Xcel Energy people. For a girl coming out of New Jersey to land with a geology degree and be living in Tioga, North Dakota, in one of the hottest oil plays in the world is nothing short of a blessing from God, a miracle. And I'm very proud of that. I'm lucky where I am. What I'd like to do today is I'd like to show a little bit about the geology. I'm going to go a little bit into the drilling and how does this all work. I'm going to start with, this is the depositional basin going from the east part of North Dakota over to the west. And it truly is a basin. It is a basin that has sedimentary deposits that have built up over the hundreds of millions of years to form this Bakken Three Forks geology that works. Back in it was in April of 2008, the U.S. Geological Survey came out with a study that really put North Dakota on the map. And the headline in Tioga's paper was 4 billion barrels. And they were talking about recoverable oil. And this was the map that came out with it. This shows the assessment units and where the different areas of the Bakken are. Our U.S. Senator Hoeven has now prompted the USGS, or U.S. Geological Survey, to go back and revisit this and include the Three Forks and Sanish formations into this study. And what this does is this helps us prepare and plan for more impact of this oil drilling as we're going to get into it. Where's the Bakken present? Bakken and Three Forks, that's primarily in the western part of North Dakota, as you know. This is a map, or actually the North Dakota stratigraphic column. And the point I want to make here is, where is the Bakken located in this sequence of rocks? Let me get back a second. We have our surface formations all the way up at the top. All the way down here, about 10,000 feet down, is where the Bakken and Three Forks are. The Bakken and Three Forks formation were laying down about 360 to 370 million years ago. So that is the time it has taken for these formations to, over time, to the heat, the temperatures, and the pressure, and the thermal maturity of these rocks has created the Bakken Formation. While I have this stratigraphic column up, and I know that Lynn's going to talk a little bit more about the fracking, I just want to put in perspective where our surface water aquifers are. And if you look at this strat column, way up at the top in that yellow is where our surface waters are. In the top 2,000 feet are where our wells are drilled. We are drilling in the Bakken down at about 10,000 feet of TVD, or true vertical depth. So if you think about that, you have your surface aquifers up above 2,000 feet. We drill that with fresh water, no additives, freshwater drill. We set a string of casing, cement it, and we isolate those uphole formations. Those water zones are now secure and protected from the rest of the drilling process. And it's very important that we understand that as we talk about this fracking that Ms. Campbell talked about earlier in her talk. I'm a farmer. I'm lucky to be a geologist, but I'm also a farmer. When I came to North Dakota, I fell in love and married a guy who had a homestead there in Tioga. So that is what part has kept me here in Tioga and in North Dakota. And I will tell you that farmers and ranchers, and I believe oil men, are very good stewards of this land. And what I want you to know is that I'm as concerned about my water well as the next farmer and the next rancher is. So it's very important that we as an industry take care of our resources. And I am absolutely certain that we are doing everything to do that. Now let me get into the geology a little bit. When we talk about the Bakken Formation, this is down a blow-up of that zone at 10,000 feet of true vertical depth. We have the Lodgepole Formation, followed by the Bakken. Now within the Bakken Formation, we have the Upper Bakken. And I know that you can't see these core pieces, but I'd be happy to share them with you later if you'd like to see them. This is the Bakken Shale. It's a black, carbonaceous, oil-rich shale. And this is where the oil is generated. The Middle Bakken is just absolutely incredible, and it looks like this. And even though you can't see it, I assure you that you would look at this rock and you would say, there is no way you could get oil out of that rock. This is pretty solid. This is what we refer to as an unconventional reservoir. That means it has low porosity, low permeability. Porosity are the holes. Permeability is the connectivity of those holes. So when those two things are low, it is an unconventional reservoir. As we go down through the section, we have the Lower Bakken Shale. Once again, a black oil-bearing shale. This is the source. This is where the oil is generated in these two shale layers. In between is the Middle Bakken, which is a sandstone, limestone, dolomite varying lithology. Below that, we get down into the Sanish Formation. Once again, a rock that you will look at, and I'll be happy to show them to you later, that you would swear you could never get oil out of. And without the fracking, we could not. We truly do have to crack this rock open and fracture stimulate it to make this whole play work. Within the Middle Bakken, we have a special spot where we like to drill. Companies do different things. Marathon has their plan, Whiting has their plan, Sampson has their plan, all these different companies. Hess has a plan. But generally speaking, there's a preferable place within the Middle Bakken, and that place is what we call the L3 zone. And what's happened is we have a cleanup in the gamma signature, and the gamma tool is a tool that measures radioactivity of these rocks. So by taking these gamma readings, we use that along with analyzing drill cuttings, by telling how fast they're drilling, and what the gas readings are as they are circulated to the surface. We then analyze and determine where we are in zone. Within this lithophases, typically we like to be in this lithophases 3, which is called the clean zone. And what that is that's a place where there are less clays, less argillaceous material, and the rock is a little bit more receptive to the fracking process. So fracking becomes more effective if we drill and place our laterals in this lithophases 3. Some companies like to track the low side of it. Some right in it. Some like to stay on the high side of it. But generally speaking, it's a zone that we like to see geologically so that we can follow this zone. And when you think about it, when you're drilling horizontally, now I know here around Fargo, which is absolutely gorgeous, things are pretty flat. However, when you get back into western North Dakota, there's a little bit more, not much, but a little bit more contours and topography going on. And that goes on underground as well. Our formations are not flat. They roll, they go uphill, they go downhill, they shift sometimes. You get a little bit of minor faulting. These are all things that the geologist uses these tools to help track and geosteer these wells. So my job and my crew's job is to read the samples, evaluate them, read all these things, and help the oil company and the directional driller track as we drill horizontally. How do we do it? Well, we do it with mud motors. The key part, when we drill vertically down, we drill our surface hole, we set our casing down into the pure formation of the Cretaceous. Then we come back and we drill vertically down to kickoff point. Now, kickoff point is the point where we start building our curve portion of the well. So once we have drilled vertically, we trip out, pick up our mud motor. Our mud motor, shown by my handy little straw, it just seems to work very well to show this. The key part is that bent sub, that little yellow bent sub up there. And what that is that allows the assembly downhole to have a little bit of a turn to it, a little bit of an angle. And when we start drilling our curve, we do what's called oriented drilling. We put the assembly in the hole, we have a little bend to that motor, and this is greatly exaggerated, and we have a bit on the end of that. During oriented drilling, we are determined by the oil company which direction we want to start and drill our well. We orient the drill string, and we push the pipe. The only thing turning is the bit. So we're kind of like augering our way down to build a curve and land in our zone. Now, during that curve, the geologist is reading all the formation markers, trying to determine if they're coming in a little higher or a little lower than planned. Now, as we adjust to that, the directional driller can then tighten that curve up a little bit, or maybe drill a tangent and drop it down a little bit. And as I say the word tangent, I will tell you that I encourage any of the young people that I talk with is, get your math, get your geometry, your trigonometry. This is one field where a young person will absolutely use that trigonometry. We use all these different formulas, sines and cosines, and I encourage all our young, I think we have a wealth of talent in our colleges right here. I really feel that. I know it. I'm fortunate enough to work with the universities and hire some of these young people and keep them right here at home in North Dakota. No longer do we have to send our young talent out to other areas. We can keep them at home, and we have a wonderful talent pool right here in North Dakota. Now, when we're drilling these wells, we orient these tools. There's a survey tool as part of this component. Now, as I said, how does that, when you have this assembly together, the bent housing is a very key part of it. Another very key part is the rotor that is inside here. For those of you who are farmers, you know what a grain auger is. As you pump fluid down through the mud motor, it transmits torque to the bit. So the bit is turning and augering its way as the weight of the drill pipe is pushing it down through the hole and augering this hole. So what we do is we go and we land down into our zone. Now we're horizontal, And this is 10,000 feet of true vertical depth, TVD. But these wells are also measured in measured depth. So the measured depth is the amount of pipe it takes to get out to land into that curve, stop and run another casing string, cement it in place, another line of security to preserve the wellbore, and then we drill horizontally. We will drill 2 miles sideways. And you have to remember, that bit is 6 inches in diameter. So when we are drilling, we have a drill rig at the surface that is steering a 6-inch bit that is 20,000 feet over there. To me, that is just incredible. I mean, I find that technology fascinating. I was out at one of the rigs and I was telling Ron and Lynn and all have heard my little story about how I used to get so bored in these trailers and, cabin fever. I'd have to go out and take a walk. That was one of my ways to just get a little break. I go out one day up by McGregor, North Dakota. I'm walking out around the section, and I'm across this one section line, and all of a sudden it has dawned on me. I'm standing out here in the middle of the section in the road. The rig is standing 1 mile over that way, and it has occurred to me that the bit, because I know the angle that this wellbore went, the azimuth it went, has passed underneath where I'm standing, and the bit is now 2 miles over that way. This is being steered 6 inches, and we know exactly where that bit is, and this is all regulated by Mr. Lynn Helms and his crew, by a drilling rig and its computers that is 20,000 feet away over to that direction. Now, when you think about that, that is incredible. I just think it's great. I think the technology involved here is absolutely fascinating. I want to go on a little bit about the Sanish Formation. It's located once again in the western part. It lays underneath the Bakken. And the reason I want to show these pictures, you look at these little pictures on the right-hand side, I have a series of pictures that have taken of digital pictures from rocks under my microscope. So these are about 30, 40 times magnification. And I just want to show you, to me it's just really neat to see how this rock changes as you go down. And I talk about the lithofacies in the middle Bakken. Well, we have lithofacies within the Sanish as well. The Sanish is part of the Three Forks Formation. The Sanish is at the top of the Three Forks, and it is another conduit to lay our little straws in to extract this Bakken crude oil. Now, if you look at that sample there, now as we come down into the middle stringer, you can see that that rock gets kind of gummy and gray looking. Go to the next picture. We're down into our target zone. And what I'm looking for here when I look at this is I look for these pieces that have rough little edges, these little bumpy textures to them. Those are the sandstones. And that's how I can tell that which lithofacies or which layer we're in. And we do have a preferable layer to be in. So these are kind of the things that the geologist looks for. You get down into the base. Once again, they change a little bit. And there's the Three Forks Shale. Now, it looks pretty obvious here when you're looking at rock coming up a wellbore from 20,000 feet away and they start getting a little jumbled up and everything, it gets a little tricky to tell just which rock you're looking at. But we try. We try real hard to geosteer these wells where we want them. Currently, where are we? We're moving ahead pretty well. There's a lot of research to be done. My one thing is I say that we're very early in this Bakken and Three Forks play. I'm reading a series of books, and I don't know if any of you here, we're in the Red River Valley. They're called Red River Valley of the North. And it tells about the pioneers coming to Fargo area, Grand Forks area, and developing this area. And one thing that I get out of these books is the people were overwhelmed with the opportunities. And I feel that that's where we are right now. We have so much to do in North Dakota. The opportunities are there. And east meets west and west meets east, and we work together on these things. The opportunities in North Dakota are just terrific. I think moving forward, there's going to be different phases to this drilling. We're in the early phases, number 1 and 2. We're establishing where the oil is. We're also getting to the point where we're trying to drill and hold some leases for these companies. Eventually, we're going to get into and we already are, into multi-well drilling and pad drilling, and eventually into secondary and tertiary recovery. I know Dakota Gasification has a nice little example in their display in the other room, and I encourage you to take a look at that. That kind of explains what secondary recovery is with a CO2 process. Phase 1 and Phase 2, what we're doing, you can drill one lateral off of a pad. As we get into phase 2, 3, we're going to be adding multiple laterals to these well bores. And what this will do is this is going to allow us to drill multiple wells off of one pad, one site. We will drill down and drill multiple Bakken wells. We will drill down, and already are, multiple Three Forks. These wells are spaced according to well density based on how well and how far out our fracs go. And we're learning all that. I know Whiting is doing a lot of work, Marathon's doing a lot of work with microseismic and determining where the fractures go. So it's really very, very exciting work to be doing. When we're out on the rigs, this is just a picture of a SimOps. Talk about some complicated operations. When we're on these pad wells, you will have a drilling rig on location, drilling one well bore, and you will have the completion rig back on the one that was drilled previously, fracking, the same time the drilling operation is going on. So boy, do these get complicated. The technology is what this is all about. I, for one, am glad I'm part of it, and thank you very much for your time.
Kathy, I find the geology of this business extremely interesting. And when I was at NDSU, I didn't study geology, but I studied economics. So if you get a chance, look at this rock. So when I do this, and I do this, I smell money, not oil. Our next speaker is Jim Brown. Jim's a good friend, and Jim and his team at Whiting have taken a small E&P company based out of Denver that started in North Dakota in about 99 or 2000 as a little E&P company looking for oil. They've now become the state's second largest oil producer, and I think they've got their eye on the #1 spot in the state. All these guys do is use their expertise and their engineering to find oil. They've taken this company, now they have 175 employees in North Dakota. They got a huge new office building, a gas plant about 14 miles south of Stanley, North Dakota, right out in the middle of the prairie. And these are high-skilled, high-wage jobs. So please welcome Jim Brown.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and I want to echo all of the thanks that the previous speakers before me have said to Senator Hoeven and all the group that has allowed this function to take place today. And Ron, I wish I'd have gone first because Kathy set the bar pretty high here, so it's going to be a tough act to follow. I always love to come to North Dakota. It's one of my favorite places. I've worked here since very early in my career. And, you know, this is the 47th least populated state in the nation. However, I grew up in the 50th least populated state in the nation. So I always have this little competition when I come here is can I outsmall the other person? So how I set the bar is I always say the high school I went to, I grew up in southeast Wyoming. The high school I went to in Wyoming graduated 408 people in 50 years. So I don't know if any of you have been to southeast Wyoming. I don't know what adjective we use to describe the landscape down there. Stark, bleak. But also what I say, I was 22 years old before I saw my first tree. So that gives you an idea of what southeast Wyoming is like. So I went to the University of Wyoming, and you may not know this, but the University of Wyoming is #1 in one thing. Its football field has the highest elevation of any Division I school in the nation. There's a sign in the end zone that says, "Welcome to 7,200 feet." So after you cram 4 years of education into 4.5 years, like I did, you're ready to get out of Laramie and go south. So upon graduation, Shell Oil Company said, "We'll take you to Houston, Texas." And I said, "Man, I'm your guy. I'm there." I should have studied Shell a little longer before I went to work for them. I didn't know that 4 months later I'd be living in Roy's Motel in Baker, Montana, working in the Williston Basin. I'm 500 miles further north than when I started this whole ordeal. So that didn't work very well, but anyway. I'm going to assume that a lot of folks in the audience perhaps do not know about Whiting Petroleum or who we are. Whiting was formed in 1980 by a gentleman, our namesake, Mr. Ken Whiting, who had a history of the oil business in Denver, first with Ladd Petroleum, then with Webb Resources, and then he in 1980, formed Whiting Petroleum. Whiting was privately held for 3 years. In 1983, It went through a merger with two other little penny stock companies in Denver, and Whiting was the surviving entity, and it was traded on the American Stock Exchange. So it was a public company for about 10 years. Whiting raised capital during that time by forming partnerships with the large insurance companies, Mass Mutual, State Street, Farm Bureau. We formed partnerships, used their money to go drill wells. In 1993, Ken Whiting was ready to take a reduced role, wanted to take life a little easier, so the company was sold to a Midwestern utility. Today, that utility is known as Alliant Energy, with headquarters in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and Madison, Wisconsin. And we were simply just an investment for the utility. We didn't provide any of our, we were a natural gas company at the time, didn't provide any gas to the utility. We simply just were an investment for them. Just after everything happened on the 3-year. So 1983, 1993, 2003, Alliant Energy needed to raise some capital. They looked at all sorts of different things. They looked at selling the assets of Whiting. They looked at selling the company. And finally, November 20th, 2003, they spun us out into the public market via an IPO. And we're now traded on the New York Stock Exchange under the symbol WLL. The great news on November 4th of 2003, we woke up. We no longer had Big Brother, the utility, looking over our shoulder. We were our own company, but we had $0 in the bank account. The utility took the entire proceeds and all of our cash from the IPO. So we were our own company, but we had no money. So it was a fun start. Since its history, since its founding, Whiting has grown. First, I got to get rid of this slide. This is just to be careful what I tell you. That's what the lawyers are trying to say with this one. Since its inception, Whiting has grown pretty much through acquisitions. That's how the company grew from 1983 on. And so early as Ron mentioned, 1999 and 2000, we got our foothold in the Williston Basin. In 2000, we purchased JN Energy out of Billings. We also purchased some assets from Collins and Ware, and we made an acquisition from Burlington out in what was called the Grasslands area, which is today what Whiting calls Lewis and Clark, where we're out drilling Three Forks wells, horizontal Three Forks wells, as Kathy just mentioned. In 2002, we bought all of the assets that Exxon had in North Dakota. And the two major fields that Exxon sold to us are Big Stick and North Elkhorn Ranch. And we still operate both of those fields today. As a matter of fact, we've just drilled 3 horizontal Three Forks wells right in the middle of Big Stick Field, which is out near the just north of Belfield. Belfield, thank you. So we've been in the Williston Basin for quite a while. After we went public in 2003, in 2005, we merged with a little company out in Salt Lake City called Equity Oil. Equity had a very nice acreage position out in Golden Valley and Billings counties of North Dakota. And so that, again, expanded our footprint into North Dakota and kind of, once again, gave us more of a foothold out there. Today, this is just a brief snapshot of Whiting, who we are. The high points on here, we are an oil company. We're 83% oil based on reserves. If you look at our production, we're 82% based on production. So there's a big emphasis in the industry to become oily. We really don't have to. We already are. Just our acquire, exploit, explore model that we've used. Like I've said, we've grown through acquisitions. Today, Whiting produces oil and gas in 14 states. I used to say we produced oil and gas in 14 states and 1 foreign country. However, earlier this year, we sold all of our properties in California, so I'm no longer able to use that line. As you can see on the chart up there, the big areas for us are the Rocky Mountains, which is pretty much the Bakken play. I also need to mention in 2005, we made a rather large acquisition of 2 properties. That's the Postal Field in the Panhandle of Oklahoma and the North Ward Estes Field down in the Permian Basin of Texas. Big, old, mature fields. Both of those, we're utilizing CO2 for enhanced oil recovery. In the Postal field up in Oklahoma, we're currently injecting about 150 million cubic feet of CO2 a day. At Northward Estes down in the Permian Basin, we're currently injecting about 250 million cubic feet of CO2 a day in these enhanced oil projects. To date, all of our CO2 is coming from natural sources or coming from geologic sources. We have just recently signed a contract with a company, Summit Energy, and they have a project called Texas Clean Energy Project, which they're building down near the big city of Penwell, Texas. This is a coal gasification plant, and they're going to use coal that they're going to convert into a syngas. They're also going to make some urea for fertilizer and generate power at this plant. We are going to be taking the CO2 from that plant to inject into Northward Estes, and that plant is scheduled to be online late 2014, 2015. This is very similar to what's going on in Dakota gasification at Beulah. That CO2 is currently going up to Weyburn in Canada, where they're utilizing it for CO2 purposes. So I've been talking for several minutes up here and haven't really said the B word yet. The Bakken. That might be a record for any talk that I have given here recently. So how did Whiting get involved in the Bakken? What led us to the Bakken? Through the various acquisitions I mentioned earlier, we picked up a small acreage position over in Richland County, Montana. And we were approached by a company by the name of Headington. They were going to drill a horizontal well in this formation over there in a field called Elm Coulee. They're going to drill into the Bakken. And it sounded pretty interesting, so we figured, what the heck, we'll go ahead. And we joined in with Headington and drilled the well. They drilled the well. It produced about 1,000 barrels a day. We thought, hey, that's pretty cool. And so we ended up drilling 5 wells with these guys. And that was all the acreage we had in the Elm Coulee field. So we were done. For us, the party was over. So we tasked our geologic and geophysical teams and said, where else in the Williston Basin could there be another Elm Coulee field? And our guys looked all over, and they searched, and they came back and said, there's this area over in Mountrail County that, based on the data we have, we think could be another Elm Coulee. So we went out there and leased about 90,000 acres, and we drilled our first well just north of the town of Newtown, and it produced about 120 barrels a day, so not what we were really after. We drilled several other wells out there and got, sort of similar results. And we were drilling these odd bird foot looking things. We were, when engineers go unsupervised, sometimes they can do some really unusual things. So you might see on the map there are some of those right in the middle that look like a big bird's foot, We were thinking the key to this Bakken was put as much horizontal wellbore as you could in the formation. That's what we were trying to do. That was our goal. And then we were pumping what we called a Hail Mary frac. You just rigged up the pump truck on this thing. You just fracked the whole works. Wherever it went. And that's what happened. Finally, we landed on another technique. We drilled one well across 2 sections, as Kathy just mentioned, 2 miles long, 2 miles of horizontal wellbore. We ran this newfangled completion technique that Baker Oil Tools had developed. It was some swell packers. We ran 10 swell packers, and we ran this new completion system they had called Frac Point. And so we did this, and basically what it did is it divided your horizontal wellbore up. I'm going to talk a little bit about this later. We fracked this well, 10-stage frac. It produced at 1,600 barrels a day, and all of a sudden we thought we're on to something. What you're seeing right here is just a map of Sanish Field out south of Stanley. That's where we were just at the end of June this year, and we've drilled a number of wells out there. It's working very well for us. As Kathy mentioned, the Bakken exists at a depth of about 10,000 feet. So we're drilling down 10,000 feet, or 2 miles, turning the corner, drilling another 2 miles horizontally. To date, Whiting is running somewhere between 30 and 50 swell packers. And let me jump ahead here. That's just the Bakken we've already talked about. This is just a diagram of what we're doing. We run between 30 and 50 swell packers. The swell packers are the little darker gray items out there. What is a swell packer? A swell packer is just simply a rubber donut. It's made out of a special material that when it's contacted by hydrocarbon, it swells. And it swells up and forms a seal between the pipe that we run out in the horizontal and the rock formation. Then in between each one of those swell packers, we run what's called a sliding sleeve. That just allows us to pump a frac job in between those two swell packers. So if we run between 30 and 40 swell packers in a well, we can perform between 30 and 40 individual frac jobs along the length of that wellbore. And we have found that to be working very well for us. We have wells today that will produce anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 barrels a day out of this Bakken and Three Forks formation. So it's a technique that we have developed with the help of Baker Oil Tools, and it appears to be working very well. I'm just going to throw out a bunch of facts here. I was trying to figure out how to wind these all into a talk, and I couldn't really figure out how to make it sound good. So I'm just going to throw a bunch of items out here so you get an idea of what whiting is about in western North Dakota. The average whiting Bakken or Three Forks well currently costs about $6 million for each well. That's with all the facilities, pumping unit, and all of the things that go along with that. The average drilling rig employs about 30 people. Currently, whiting has 17 drilling rigs running in the Williston Basin. We have 9 rigs running in Sanish Field. We have 8 rigs running on our other acreage outside of Sanish. Oops, don't need that one. There we go. We are planning to drill 217 wells in western North Dakota this year. Our current budget for 2011 in North Dakota is $767 million. Each well, the pipe that we are going to use to complete our program this year is just over 7 million feet of pipe. You can think that's a number of rail cars that are going to be hauling pipe into North Dakota. Each frac job we pump out there, we place about 1.8 million pounds of sand. If you look at the total number of frac jobs we're going to pump this year, we're going to utilize just over 200,000 tons of frac sand in western North Dakota. Just the logistics of getting all this stuff to western North Dakota are pretty monumental. I was trying, as I was flying up here yesterday, I was trying to count the number of truck trips to each location that it takes to drill a well, because traffic is a huge issue in western North Dakota. And I was just thinking, moving the rig in, building location, all this sort of stuff, I can easily get to over 500 truck trips to each location by the time we get the rig in and out, the frac tanks in and out, the frac tanks filled with water, the frac tanks emptied of water after we flow them back, get all the frac sand in there, have all the people, equipment, and material that we need to drill the well. So there's easily over 500 truck trips to each location as we drill a well. The other thing Kathy talked about, how amazing the technology that we employ. The thing that has amazed me is to drill the 20,000 feet. Currently, for our 9 rigs that we have running in Sanish Field, our average to drill from spud when we start the well to TD is just under 20 days. Our average is about 19.2. The fastest we have drilled a well to 20,000 feet is 11.2 days. So we're drilling over 1,000 feet per day. Our goal that our drilling team has when we go horizontal, when we kick out, is to make the entire 10,000 feet with a single bit run. We're starting to be able to do that with some consistency. And this is all due to the technology that the service companies have been working with us to employ. So it's been a tremendous learning experience. It's hard for me to think that I've been in this business for over 30 years and still learning. I learned things from Kathy this morning, so you still manage to keep learning things out here. We currently have 2.5 dedicated frac crews. Each frac crew employs about 65 people. And as Ron mentioned, Whiting is employing a fairly large number of folks here in North Dakota. So you can understand with all the rigs we have running, all the frac crews we have running, there's a tremendous amount of jobs that are available in North Dakota. Whiting currently has over 90 open positions. So we are continuing to hire. We are continuing to focus on the northern colleges. We call it our northern operation. And we have supported not all the schools. We've supported a number of the schools in North Dakota, along with Montana Tech over in Montana. One other thing I just want to talk about is early in the development of Sanish Field, it was pointed out that there seemed to be more vapors coming off of the production tanks out here than what one would expect. And so Whiting investigated this, and we found out that, yes, this was true. It appears that the oil and gas that we produce out of the Bakken, the gas has a real affinity for the oil. It doesn't separate as easy as perhaps some of the other gas crude mixtures that we produce in other parts of the nation. So we did some work on this, and we have started. Whiting is currently heading up a task force. We're working with the North Dakota Department of Health to come up with a solution for this problem, along with a number of the companies here in North Dakota. So we are trying to work in a collaborative effort with the regulatory agencies to come up with a solution rather than to work in an adversarial relationship, which has sort of been the regulatory method. And we think this, in North Dakota this can happen. Because of a lot of other things that are going on here, we would like this to be the model for how we work out our regulatory issues in the future. I've brought this up with Region 8 EPA in Denver. We'll see what happens. So we'll see if we can make this work. In addition to Sanish Field, and as shown on this slide right here, we have an additional 468,000 acres in 5 additional prospect areas in western North Dakota. In addition, we have 129,000 more acres just over the state line in Sheridan, Roosevelt, and Richland counties, Montana. 8 of our 17 rigs that we have running in North Dakota are drilling in these prospect areas outside of Sanish. We plan to drill at least 2 wells in every one of these prospect areas by the end of 2011. If you look at all the potential locations we have in North Dakota, we currently have over 1,500 locations remaining to be drilled. So we're currently drilling, as I mentioned, just a little over 200 wells this year. We're going to be out here for a long time drilling wells. These wells have a very long production life. Right now, our modelers are carrying this out for 25 years. I doubt if we will be done in 25 years, but we're going to be out here for a long, long time. As was mentioned earlier, according to state records, we're the #2 oil producer in the state. In 2010, Whiting paid just over $108 million to the state of North Dakota in production taxes. I was very interested to hear Eileen's numbers to make sure my numbers fit inside her numbers so that we didn't... we paid royalties to the state in the amount of $12.7 million and federal royalties of just over $11 million. This is the one I like. To the citizens of North Dakota, we paid out royalties of nearly $117 million. So I think there's a few very happy people out there in North Dakota. Our corporate philosophy is to be good stewards of our assets for our shareholders and be good stewards of the land, environment for the landowners and citizens of North Dakota. We are currently striving to attain zero emissions on all of our operations. We have not gotten there. It's a goal. We will continue to pursue that goal. In our experience, the one thing you should all be proud of is the indigenous workforce in North Dakota is one of the best in the nation. The work ethic that is instilled in the citizens of North Dakota is something you should all be proud. The only problem we have is there isn't enough of you. So you need to get out there and make more North Dakotans. We are very appreciative of the efforts of North Dakota to support the training and the programs that have allowed us to fill many of these positions. And we are making a strong effort to keep the citizens of North Dakota, the citizens and students of North Dakota in North Dakota. I want to acknowledge the importance of producing oil, or producing energy for that matter, in the U.S. The approximate 400,000 barrels a day that is produced in North Dakota is 400,000 barrels a day that we don't have to import and pay foreign governments for. At $90 a barrel, that represents $36 million a day, or $13 billion a year. Now, to put that in perspective, if Senator Hoeven were here, that's about what our government spends in a day. So through your efforts here in North Dakota for a year, you've underwritten the U.S. budget for one day. But let's keep it up. Let's see if we can't get that to 2 days. I want to thank you for the invitation to come talk to you today. I appreciate everything that goes on in North Dakota. I've worked in North Dakota off and on over my 30-year career. It's still one of my favorite places to be. And yes, I have been to Crosby, North Dakota. The Sweet Home Inn in Crosby, it was one of my hangouts early in my career. I really appreciate everything you folks are doing up here. I hope that we maintain a good remain a good corporate citizen here in the state of North Dakota, and I look forward to all your questions. Thank you very much. Thanks, man.
Thank you, Jim. The technology that Jim and the other producers have advanced in North Dakota, just through their, what really I look at the Bakken as is a big research laboratory, because they have taken what worked early in eastern Montana into Montreal County and now developed a technology that has expanded the Bakken play 10 or 20-fold into other counties across western North Dakota, and Lynn will talk a little bit about that. Our next speaker is Lynn Helms. Lynn is the state's top regulator. He works for the North Dakota Industrial Commission, which is the governor, the Attorney General, and the Ag Commissioner. Lynn is a tremendous asset to the state of North Dakota, certainly a good friend of mine, and I think certainly the best regulator in North Dakota, unquestionably the best regulator in the country of oil and gas, and I think today is the best regulator in the world. So, please welcome.
Oh. Thank you, Ron, for that kind introduction. It is great to be here in the Red River Valley. I really appreciate it. We're talking about a partnership here that generates real wealth, true wealth, not the kind that we refer to sometimes as quantitative easing, where we push a button and magical numbers appear somewhere and things happen in the economy. North Dakota is unique in that we view our relationship with our industry as a partner. The regulators in North Dakota, I can speak for myself and for Dave Glott at the Health Department, we really see it as a partnership. And our goal is first, when a company comes into North Dakota, to educate them on how we do things here and how our current companies are doing things, and then only as a last resort to ever have to take any kind of enforcement action on anybody. It's unusual to get to share the stage with a couple of fabulous ladies from New Jersey. I found that amazing, and I've often told that I have a vivid imagination. Here's a business opportunity for you, Scott. Maybe we could do Jersey Shore of the Red River. I don't know. We are the Department of Mineral Resources. Hopefully I can figure this thing out and we can advance the slides. We have been on a remarkable journey the last few years. What I want to do is three things this morning. I want to talk a little bit about the size and scope of this thing, and then I want to talk about hydraulic fracturing and how it works, and then finally I want to talk about some of the business opportunities that are already at play and maybe some future business opportunities. Take a look at that slide. Industrial Commission cases heard. That is the type of business model everybody would like to employ. I think that's the kind of business model Neset Consulting has been seeing over the recent years, and it's certainly what we're seeing here. I wanted to make a comment. It's not that unusual that when you get a geologist showing up and then a great business partner like Whiting, that a regulator follows not too long after that. So we regulate this thing. We spend most of our time setting up spacing units for these horizontal wells. And so this is just a section view of a typical Bakken Three Forks well and how we set up the 2 square miles that well is going to produce the oil from. I refer to it as a box of rocks. You see it there on the right-hand slide. The reason we do that is 100 years ago, the oil industry was unregulated. This is Spindletop in Texas. And the rule of capture was the rule of the day. You put as many rigs on your land as you could, you put them as close to the border as you could, and you produced as much of the neighbor's oil as you could. And if you were producing more than you could fit in the tank, you put it on the ground. And that was the nature of the industry 100 years ago. It's a vastly different industry. This is what it looks like out in the Montreal County area. A little bit of an expansion on that Sanish and partial map that you saw. What you see on the left-hand side there is the oil industry of decades ago. The vertical well industry that started in the 1950s and ran through the 1990s. Look at all those well spots over there. What you see today is the industry of the 21st century. Wells being very organized in where the surface locations are located, and then using horizontal well bores to extract the resource. I want to show you the difference in the footprint on the land. Make sure you look at the left-hand side when you look at the footprint of decades ago versus the footprint of today. It is amazing how that looks. Let's just jump back and forth. There's what we're draining with that. Look how the locations are lining up along major thoroughfares and roads where we can put the pipelines and everything in and make that work. I'm not sure where the pointer is on this thing, but I'm going to give it a try. I want to show you this little stretch of road right down here. It's about 7 miles long. The drilling rig wasn't there the day that Vern came out and took this picture, but there you have it. That's what it looks like from the air. 7 miles long, 14 well pads alternating there. Look at the beautiful Badlands, completely undisturbed, and yet we're extracting the oil from underneath those Badlands with the wellbores going to the south. This is the pattern that's developing out across the west through McKenzie and Williams County, where the surface locations are 4 miles apart. The wells are drilled toe to toe, and so we leave most of the landscape completely undisturbed. This little section of road, I think this is a marathon operation. One lonely little pumping unit on each one of those locations, but he's waiting for his brothers and sisters to show up because one well isn't going to extract the oil from the Bakken and Three Forks. It's probably going to take 7 or 8. But they'll be drilled from those same pads. So what we've done here is disturbed about 70 acres of land, and we're going to extract the minerals from 20,000 acres with that 70 acres of disturbance. What a beautiful thing to be able to do. By the way, business opportunity, Vern Witten Photography right out of Fargo here, out there doing aerial photographs of the Bakken and Three Forks play. If we take a look at rig count, we just took a spurt last week while I was on vacation. I left on vacation with 184 rigs operating. I came back to 192. We have decoupled this thing to a great extent from oil price. Used to always be coupled to oil price. I always like to point out I took the job right here. We got down to 0 rigs in February of '99, got a good baseline established, and now we're showing what we can do. All right. You can see that this thing really is decoupled from oil price to a great extent because these companies have taken much of the geological risk and much of the economic risk out of this play. It is a true resource play. We drilled 1 dry hole last year in 1,213 wells. They're calling it a dry hole. It was drilled up there in Divide County. They just got in the wrong layer. Kathy and I agree on that. It wasn't a dry hole. They just got in the wrong rock. And so really, 1,213 successive producing wells. 78% of those are going to make more than a 10% rate of return for their investors. Just a fabulous play and what it's generating for North Dakota. The size of this thing, it covers 15,000 square miles. It runs from I-94 to the Canadian border. It runs from Highway 49 to the Montana border, and it'll be followed up by the Tyler and the Spearfish plays. This thing is like a bison fullback. 300 pounds, 4-second, 40 yards, coming at you. What are you going to do with it? Well, you give it the football and let it run. That's what you do with something like this. It is enormous in size. It is gigantic. We coined a new adverb. We call it ginormous to describe the Bakken and Three Forks. This is the production profile of a typical Bakken well. They come on really strong and they fade fast, but as Jim said, they stay on the landscape for a long time. We're using a 28-year model. Over that time, this is what that Bakken well does, that single Bakken well. We've drilled 2,600 of them. It's going to produce about 575,000 barrels of oil. It's going to generate $20 million of net profit for its investors. It's going to pay $4.25 million in taxes, sales, extraction, and gross production taxes, about $7 million out to the mineral owners, wages and salaries of $1.6 million, operating expenses going to the power company and all those guys of almost $2 million, and it costs a little under $7 million to drill and complete that well. We're seeing a lot of them these days now approaching $9 million depending on the frac stages. We're expecting about 2,000 wells a year to be drilled in western North Dakota, and this thing has got legs. We're looking at a 20-year life for the drilling play alone here. So as we think about business opportunities, we need to think about being here a long time. This is what we expect production to do. We're now at 385,000 barrels a day. We are very going to easily achieve this P50 goal of 475,000 barrels a day, and we're really anticipating that we're going to move into second place in the nation at 750,000 to 1 million barrels of oil a day. That's based on, this is the USGS number of 5 billion barrels of oil. We think we're currently looking at that and expecting the USGS to come out with a new number that's more than double of that, of the 11 billion barrels a day. let's talk fracking. Why do we frack this rock? Well, you're going to get to look at the rock later as you talk to Kathy. But let's talk about the why, the how, and the regulation of it. All the easy oil's already been developed, the oil that flows without fracking. These unconventional resources have to be fracked in order to produce. They're uneconomic without it. You have to create a path for the oil to flow. This is what it looks like at the surface. I'm going to mention later, but those tanks are built in Fargo, out here at O'Day, and I see them coming down the interstate every day and going by my office. It takes anywhere from 100 to 200 of those tanks and some amazing truck drivers to get them onto the location. We pump 2 to 4 million gallons of fresh water and an average of 4 million pounds of sand or ceramic beads into this well at a cost of $2 million. Takes 20,000 horsepower running on the surface for anywhere from 3 to 6 days to get that job done. What happens downhole is, first we pump in these miniature bowling balls. They're made out of the same thing as a bowling ball, and they start at 1/8 of an inch, and they run up to about 5 inches in diameter. They open these sliding sleeves that Jim talked about and direct the water out into the rock to form a crack, and then we pump the beads or sand into that crack to hold it open. And we pump one after another, up to 40 stages now of these bowling balls. Each one is a little bit larger than the last one, about 1/8 to anywhere from 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch larger than the last one, so that it fits into a different hole downhole. And we chop this wellbore up into about 300-foot long sections and hydraulically fracture the rock like that. All of that is taking place. There we go. So the purpose is the frac fluid is to crack the reservoir. The gel carries the sand, and then all of that is flowed back out of the well. Looks like this when you're done, a spider web of cracks in the rock. Looks like this when you're done, if you could slice it open and look at a typical horizontal well. Why do we want to regulate this at the state level? Every basin, every state is different. We're blessed with fantastic geology here in North Dakota, not like Pennsylvania at all. If you look at a cube of the geology of North Dakota, you can see we're fracking down here, your drinking water is up here, and we're getting rid of the frac fluid right here. So you drink water from the top 1/4 of a mile, or half a mile. We dispose of the wastewater 1 mile below the earth, and we're fracking down here 2 miles below the earth, with rock layers upon rock layers in between. We've been regulating this business for decades. We know how to do it in North Dakota. Water Commission does the supply. We do the well construction and flowback. The Health Department does it, engages if there's any kind of an incident or accident. So the Water Commission's job, don't let them extract too much groundwater. We got to drill 2,000 to 3,000 wells a year for 15 to 25 years. We need 30 million gallons of water a day. That's a huge number. So they've mapped out the glacial aquifers. You can see them out here. They're capable of supplying about 7 million gallons a day. We've got to get 23 million gallons from someplace else. The logical place is the Missouri River. 1 inch of water out of Lake Sakakawea is 10 billion gallons. That's enough to frack 5,000 wells at 2 million gallons a well. 1 inch is a 2 to 2.5 year supply. So in 20 years, we could lower that lake 10 inches. 10 inches. And it's been overflowing all summer. Now, in well construction, we require 2 strings of casing and cement. The frac is over 1 mile to 2 miles below your portable water and all kinds of pressure tests. So let's just run through that regime. First, we drill through your drinking water with fresh water. We put 2 layers of protection in, casing and cement. We drill down to the kickoff point. We run that mud motor in and we build the curve. We add 2 more layers of protection, a steel casing and cement. We drill the horizontal lateral. We run a liner in, and now we got 5 layers of protection between frac fluid and your drinking water. We then, just want to point out again, your drinking water's up here, 0 to 2,500 feet. The frac is going on down here at 10,000 feet. How do we know that those fracs aren't 10,000 feet tall? Well, Whiting is a pioneer in this. They've set up a buried seismic array over Sanish Field and monitored, I think they're up to about 140 frac jobs now that they've monitored in that field. When they do that, it looks like this. They can actually map each crack as it grows. At the tip of that crack, as it grows through the rock, it's about like setting off an M80 firecracker. And you can hear that at the surface. And so they can monitor each one of those incidents where somebody set off an M80 down there with the frac job and map out these fractures. This is what it looks like from the toe of the well back to the heel. Jim, you missed a big section right here. So when you drill the well next door, you want to pay attention to that. Water flow back is regulated by us as well. We don't store water in open pits. We store it in tanks, and we dispose of it. We're, again, blessed with geology that's capable of disposing of that water here in the Dakota Formation, a mile below the Earth's surface. This is an enormous business opportunity in the state of North Dakota. Right now, we have 300 water disposal wells. We need 1,500 by the time this play is over. So, great investment. We're going to need 3 water disposal wells in every township out there, covering 15,000 square miles. If there is an incident, then the health department steps in to help with the cleanup. We already have federal laws in place, EPCRA and the MSDS, that require the frac chemicals to be disclosed to us, and we can release those to doctors or whoever needs them at the end. These are the chemicals. We won't go too much through this list, but I just want to point out that you encounter these things every day. If, for example, you put on makeup or took a laxative or ate some candy this week, you ingested some frac chemicals. If, for example, you went to the dentist sometime in the last year, you ingested frac chemicals because he uses them to disinfect his dental equipment. Once this stuff is mixed into frac fluid and pumped into the ground, it's very, very dilute, and really it is no health risk whatsoever. The only risk is the concentrated tanks of it being trucked out to the location. We need to pay a lot of attention to that. There are many, many past studies and too many studies going on right now about how safe hydraulic fracturing is. The last thing I want to point out is we have a great geological survey in North Dakota. We have surveyed the entire state for methane occurrences in shallow water, and we've found it everywhere in the state, even here in Trail County, where there's never even been a well permitted. So methane in water is a naturally occurring thing. By the way, just south of Fargo here, you've got some real opportunities for shallow gas. Once natural gas prices begin to come back, it's going to be a ways out. So let's talk about business opportunities. Obviously, if you can move dirt, there's money to be made in the oil patch in western North Dakota. Drilling rigs. We're going to add probably another 25 to 35 drilling rigs over the next year. Every one of those needs almost a dozen of these trailers located on it, one of which Kathy's crew stays in, one of which the directional people stay in. And so those are not manufactured in North Dakota right now. There's an opportunity there to manufacture those in North Dakota. They're all being imported. The frac tanks, as I talked about, are manufactured here in Fargo right now. And the frac companies are setting up in Williston and Minot and Dickinson. To the best of my knowledge, there's nobody that really repairs the pumps for these frac companies here. Most of that equipment gets shipped out of state for repair parts. The workover rigs are manufactured in Mohall, North Dakota, and production tanks are manufactured in Dickinson, North Dakota, along with these pressure vessels in Dickinson and Williston, North Dakota. So there are lots and lots of businesses that are engaged in the process of using or partners with this industry. Natural gas plants. As you know, we're flaring about 30% of our natural gas. There's going to be $3 billion invested in gathering natural gas and processing it this next year. Somebody needs to dig those ditches and lay those pipes. Tremendous business opportunities. Another huge business opportunity is all of that frac sand. We currently consume in this state about 4 million tons of frac sand and ceramic proppant a year. Every bit of that is imported from out of state. We have mapped out resources of clay and sand in North Dakota. There's a 29 billion ton deposit of ceramic producing clay in southwestern North Dakota that's just begging for somebody to go in there and make ceramic proppant. Right now we import it all from China. Every bit of it comes across the ocean into Seattle and down the rails from China. Huge, huge business opportunity to make ceramic proppant in southwestern North Dakota. There's enough clay in that deposit to satisfy all the proppant needs for the Bakken and Three Forks play for the entire life of the play. Another opportunity, Kathy mentioned these, the geosteering and mud motor system. Right now, every one of these mud motors, there's 3 in North Dakota for every well. So let's just do some simple math. That's about 600 mud motors in the state of North Dakota right now. There's 1 in the hole, one sitting on standby, and one on a hotshot truck going to Oklahoma or Texas to be repaired. Why isn't there a repair facility for mud motors in North Dakota? We got these empty shops where we used to, build loaders and stuff like that. So there are 600 mud motors circulating around through the oil patch in North Dakota, none of them being repaired in the state of North Dakota. This is a giant. It is tremendous in size and scope. Nobody has ever before developed a 15,000 square mile oil field. The opportunities out here for vapor incinerators, for vapor recovery units, for mud motors, for all of those business kind of opportunities are absolutely mind-boggling. And hopefully we're going to get Kathy to talk about some of the things they're doing. Nothing is without risk. Unfortunately, most of our risk comes from a place I call Disneyland for politicians. Inside the Washington Beltway are people that are constantly thinking of ways to tackle or slow down that bison fullback that we have working out there in the Bakken and Three Forks play. Please, every opportunity you get, talk to your congressman or senator about how important this is to the economy of North Dakota and how important it is that they keep that fullback running. Thank you for your time. It's great to be here, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. We've got about 5 minutes for questions. Any questions? If not, I'll start with one. And Jim, I think one of the big things I hear a lot across North Dakota is the oil industry in North Dakota has a history of booms and busts. We've been very fortunate here to have some things that have always kept industry on the map somewhat. But the type of investment we're seeing and the magnitude of the play, if you're looking at a business opportunity in the Bakken, what are the thoughts from your standpoint?
Well, I mean, if you look at things that have gone on in other parts of the country and also in the Williston Basin in the past, the industry has this history of boom and bust, but you always look at what caused it, what was the reason. And, for us, we're a very price-driven business. I mean, we need to have a certain oil price in order to make it attractive for us to continue to invest dollars in North Dakota. So you would like to think that we would get to the point where we had some stable energy policy, energy plan in place that, there's risk here for us too. We're investing these dollars on the hope that we're going to get this oil price out in the future. You'd like to have the United States develop a policy where you had at least some confidence in maybe a floor oil price, a floor energy price, something that would enable you to continue to make investments. So I guess we're just, you'd like to have something that would prevent oil from going back down to $30 a barrel. And that's what's going to be required for us to continue to invest out here.
And it appears that one of the things that we're going to see as companies get through this initial phase of drilling to save their leasehold against their competitors, companies are going to begin to get more efficient, and we can lower the price threshold for the Bakken, which is now probably in that 55 to 70 range.
Yes.
Depending on where you're at and what you're producing, of course. But if we can continue to lower that threshold, it helps buffer the industry against prices. From an employment standpoint, the industry in 2005 was about a $2 billion industry in North Dakota. It was a $12 billion industry in 2009. When we do our study again on 2011, we're going to be quite amazed at what we've seen in the last 2 years. But we've gone from a roughly 4,500 direct employees in the industry to my number is now about 35,000 direct employees on the ground in North Dakota. And each one of the employees that an oil operator has, there's probably a magnitude of 6 contractors for each of those employees. So we're going to continue to see that workforce grow. And you transition somewhat from a transient workforce that's really not transient right now because the drilling rigs are going to be here. But as you mature these fields, as I see them, each well that you drill, if you're going to drill 2,000 wells this year, each of those wells becomes a $6 billion business on the prairie. That business needs somebody to open it up every day, to tend for it all day long, and put it to bed at night. And every single day, each of those wells that we put are going to need that person for those 27 years. along with the associated gas plants, the trucking, and all of those components. So you will see a transition, as we're seeing now in the Stanley area. We've seen in Bowman from the earlier Red River play, a long-term, stable people that want to certainly live. And the amount of building and housing that's going up in western North Dakota, you know, we hear a lot of stories about all the places you can't find a place to live, but the building is incredible. The numbers of apartments and homes and all of those different things. Scott, you have a question?
Yes. First off, my compliments to the panel. You've explained a very technical subject in a manner that even a recovering attorney can understand. You've talked a lot about the oil itself, but you touched on a number of different times on the business opportunities that are available throughout the state. North Dakota is notorious for educating people and shipping them off to some other parts of the nation. Is there an effort to take the information that you have, package it somehow or another, and pump it back into our high schools so that the students who are sitting in desks today will be aware of what the opportunities are and you know, will consider careers back here in the state?
Thanks for your question. And we actually had a meeting with the chancellor and the vice presidents of the university system about 10 days ago, and have continually talked about the demands of the skilled workforce going forward, whether it's plumbers, truckers, computers. Those are the skill sets that you need. 1,000 people with 2 years or less degree for every one engineer. So an industry grows its own from within. We can teach them the things we need about the oil and gas industry. So we do have a program along with the lignite industry in North Dakota. We've got someone, it's called Energy Career Awareness Partnership. We've got someone out in the schools across the state on a regular basis, has reached over 80,000 students over the past 10 years. But we need to do more about the career and technical education aspect and letting parents, we've kind of ironed this down to parents, I think, that parents need to understand the tremendous opportunities for 2-year degrees and degrees that you can get in 6 months or less. Any big employer will provide that additional training to you once they get you on board. Jim?
Yeah, Ron, I'd just like to add something to that, because maybe the group here is not aware of this, but I'm going to use Whiting for example because that's one I know the most about. When we went public in 2003, the average age, we had 110 employees. The average age across our company was 55 years old. So what that tells you, we have a very aging workforce in the oil and gas business. What happened is, when I went to work in the oil business, 1974, we might remember the Arab oil embargo, huge influx of people into the industry. The downturn that happened in the 80s and 90s, nobody went to work in the oil and gas business. Because of our reputation, a lot of the schools, we currently at Whiting have one employee who went to the University of Colorado Boulder. They do not want to be involved in our industry. It's just not thought to be cool. We're not green, all that sort of things. So there's a huge demand in the oil and gas business for younger people. We need younger people in the industry. Today, Whiting has about 650 employees company-wide. We've only dropped our average age to 46 years old. So please, you know, we put on information nights at Montana Tech, numerous schools here in North Dakota to try to encourage people. But I agree, we have to work at them younger. We've actually started a program in Denver. We bring in high school kids for a couple weeks during the summer just to expose them. And we've actually got a few of those kids to go on to Colorado School of Mines and look at employment within the industry.
Kathy's also done a tremendous job giving young North Dakotans a tremendous number of females an opportunity to get some experience, send them on to school in North Dakota. So the other thing that we talked about at our meeting with the university system was you get a lot of engineering students into UND and NDSU. A lot of those students fall out of those programs, but we can use engineering techs, something the Bismarck State College is looking at. We need to steer those students that you know, go to college thinking they're going to be engineers, and it doesn't quite work out that way. They can still become engineer techs and have a tremendous job in North Dakota. So on behalf of the panel, thank you very much. We appreciate seeing you the rest of the day.
Thanks, Stu.